Hey everybody, Mike Iaconelli back out here in the shop, and we're going to continue our talk about a must-have lure in your tackle box, and that is a suspending jerkbait. This is part 2 to the ultimate guide to suspending jerkbaits. In the first part, we gave you an overview of why this thing is so good. Why this is a must-have, right? We talked about it's good in all water temperatures. It's good all seasons, not just cold, not just winter. It's good all year round. It's great in all different water types, ponds, rivers, lakes, streams, tidal water. It's good everywhere. Its only limitation is probably extremely dirty, muddy water. We talked about how a suspending jerkbait can create a reaction strike, how you can make fish bite it. And that's really a great segue to today's talk about a suspending jerkbait. And that is how we're going to fish this lure, how we're going to make fish bite it, even when they're not hungry. We're going to be talking about that, and one word in particular you're going to hear me talk about is cadence. We're going to get into how to fish it, the right cadence, twitches, jerks, the right cadence with that lure. And then at the end of this segment, we're also going to cover picking the right type of suspending jerkbait. And with that, we're going to be talking about style, color, and size. And that's important as well. But let's get right into it in this second part. Is what makes a jerkbait magic? What makes a suspending jerkbait outperform all these other lure types? And it's how that lure moves through the water, right? The action, how it comes through the water. And simply put, a suspending jerkbait strength is based on the action that you impart, right? The action that you impart with your movement, with your rod and reel movement. That's the key to a suspending jerkbait. Stop and think about that for a second. Other lure types, a crankbait, a grub, a swim bait, a chatterbait, other lure types impart action on their own, right? You cast and reel, and the lure does all the work. But with a suspending jerkbait, a majority of your bites, whether it's a hunger strike or whether it's a reaction strike from a non-active fish, and we're going to have a lot of bites like that on a suspending jerkbait, most of those bites happen because of what you do with the lure. You're not leaving it up to the lure. You're making the action of the lure. So this is a key part to this series, guys, and it is action. It's how. How are we going to make those fish bite? And that action, that movement that I'm talking about is all going to be based around cadence. And cadence is the definition that I would give it is the rhythm of the lure, right? The rhythm of the lure. And, you know, that cadence is imparted by your twitches or jerks. Once again, I mentioned this in the first part. It's called a jerk bait because it's a bait that you're jerking, right? Twitches and jerks, that rhythm of that movement is your cadence, okay? Let me do this. Let me start by showing you how we're going to get into that cadence. And let me tell you how important it is to listen to the fish to determine your cadence. And then I'll tell you about these generalizations of when to pick what cadence. But let's start right with the cast. Let's get right into it. Without even talking about style or color or size yet, we have a jerkbait. We have a suspending jerkbait tied on our rod. And we're going to go out in the late fall, very timely. We're going out in the late fall to fish a suspending jerkbait. This happens to be, this is a Shadow Wrap by Rapala. It's a terrific suspending jerkbait. It's on the top of my list for certain applications. And we've got this thing tied on. And when I get this lure, I'm going to make a long cast past where I believe the fish are living. You're going to hear me mention it over and over again, but using your electronics, 2D, side imaging, down imaging, and especially active target, forward facing, you can really get a handle on where the fish are in the water column, right? Suspending jerkbait, a lot of times those fish are going to be suspended. They're off the bottom, they're under the surface, they're in the middle. Great lure for this. We're going to make a long cast past where we believe the fish are at. We're going to crank it before we ever start twitching or jerking, before we even start this cadence. We're going to crank, let's call it 10 to 15 cranks, okay? And the reason we're going to do that at the beginning of the cast, remember, we're casting past where we believe the fish are living, so we're giving ourselves room. We're giving ourselves 10 or 15 cranks, just straight reel cranks, to let that bait achieve its diving depth, okay? All these jerkbaits we're going to be looking at, these suspending jerkbaits, have either a shallow bill, a short bill, or a long bill. But in either case, different diving depths, right? But in either case, that bill, like a crankbait, needs time to get down, needs time to achieve its diving depth. So by making that long cast past our target, by cranking 10 or 15 times, we're letting this bait get down where it's supposed to be. You know, in most cases, 3, 5, 7, 8 feet. With some of the deeper models, 8, 10, 12, 14, 15 feet, right? So we're letting that bait get down. But once that bait gets down, once we've cranked it 10 or 15 times, right? Now kicks in the part where this is critical. Pay attention. If you're doing other things, this is paramount right now. This is the most critical component to this, which is now we have to figure out what cadence those fish want. What rhythm, what series of twitches or jerks does that fish want? And that's what we got to figure out. So long cast past the fish, 10 or 15 cranks. Once I do that, I'm going to begin my cadence. Here's a simple rule of thumb. And before we get to our generals on cadence, here's a simple rule of thumb. I want you to change your cadence every 5 to 10 casts. I want you to change your cadence, okay? So I want you to alter your rhythm a little bit every 5 or 10 casts until you get your first bite. Until the fish tell you what the right cadence is. Because you can read books and listen to this series to the end, but at the end of the day, the fish are going to want what they want, right? So we have to listen to them. So long cast, 10 or 15 winds, and then we're going to start our cadence. And as a rule of thumb, I generally start with a 2-1 or a 3-1 cadence. And it's like this. 10 or 15 cranks, twitch, twitch, pause, right? A 2-1 cadence. Twitch, twitch, pause. A 2-1 cadence. Twitch, twitch, pause. A 3-1 cadence. 10 or 15 cranks, twitch, 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 pause. 3-1 cadence. Twitch, 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 pause, right? Every 10 or 15, 5 or 10 cast, switch it up a little bit, okay? So 5 casts in a row, twitch, twitch, pause. And my pause is going to be 2 seconds. 1, 2. Twitch, twitch, pause. 1, 2. I'll do that for 5 or 10 casts. No bites. My next 5 or 10 casts, twitch, 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 with a shorter pause. 2-second pause. 1, 2. Twitch, twitch, twitch. That's at 3-1 cadence with a shorter pause. I do that for 5 or 10 casts, 10 or 15 casts. My next 10 or 15 casts, 5 or 10 casts, I throw out there a 1-1 cadence. Twitch. Big long pause now, right? Twitch. 5-second pause. 1, 2, 3, 4, right? So I'm changing my cadence. I'm changing my rhythm until, here's the 1-1 cadence. My second cast, 10 or 15 cranks. Twitch. 1, 2, 3, 4. Rod loads up. That's the most critical thing in all of jerkbait fishing, is to find that correct cadence or rhythm, right? And we're going to impart that cadence with our rod, with twitches and jerks. You know, when we get to this last part of this series, this is the ultimate guide on suspending jerkbaits, we're going to talk about rod, reel, and line. And normally, sometimes guys brush over that. Don't brush over our last segment, because this rod and reel and line are going to be real important to talking about how we're going to make these twitches. But basically, the cadence is imparted by rod twitches, rod jerks, and there's a lot of wrist in that, right? It's a lot of wrist movement. But we're constantly going to change our cadence or rhythm until the fish respond. It's so critical. Listen to me. It's so critical that when you get your first bite, you have to remember your cadence. This is hard because I get excited. You get excited. We all get excited, right? You might have went 20 minutes without a bite, and then you get your first jerkbait bite. It's key to remember the cadence, because as you get dialed into the cadence, you're solving the puzzle of what they want on a particular day with that suspending jerkbait. That twitching movement, those pauses, that bait just sitting there or rising or falling, we'll get to that in the third part of the series. That's how you're going to get fish to eat it, especially when they're not hungry, especially when you're making them react. So cadence is the most important thing. All right, guys, here's your general rules. These are generals, so use this as a template. At the end of the day, go out there and let the fish tell you, but here's your general rules for picking the right cadence. And I like to base it off of water temperature and water clarity, okay? So here's your generals on selecting the right cadence for a suspending jerkbait. Let's start with water temperature. The colder the water, the slower your cadence. The warmer the water, the faster your cadence, the more rapid your cadence, okay? So that's a great, easy general to remember. If you get somewhere and you're late fall or winter, kind of like what's going on now, and you look at your water temperature gauge and your water temperature is in the 40s or 50s, that's cold. So generally, my cadence is going to be slower. Less twitches, longer pauses. But if I'm fishing a suspended jerkbait for fish suspended around standing timber, or suspended over cane piles, or suspended on the end of rock point, and it's summer, and it's hot, and the water temperature is like 85 or 90, I'm going to make rapid twitches, shorter pauses. I'm going to increase the action of the bait, right? So the general rule of thumb for cadence for water temperature is the colder the water, the slower your cadence, the longer your pauses. The warmer the water, the faster your twitches, your cadence, the faster your jerks, and the less time between pauses. Moderate temperature, somewhere in the middle, okay? There's your general rule for water temperature. Your general rule for water clarity is real simple as well. And it's like this. The clearer the water, the faster your cadence. The dirtier the water, the slower your cadence. And that's a simple fact of giving the fish a chance to see the bait, right? And clear to ultra clear, clean, I mean, drop a penny in 15 foot and read the date. Fish get a great look at the bait. So you want to keep it moving. You don't want to let them get a good look at the bait. You want them to just see it moving. But in stained to dirty water, and remember, ultra muddy, better baits. We're not going to fish that. But heavily stained, light mud, we generally want a slower cadence. And that is because we want to give the fish more time to find it, to see it, right? They don't have as good of a long-range view of that lure. So they're using some of their other senses. They're using their sound. They're using the vibration with their lateral line to find it. But we're going to slow our cadence down in dirty water to help them find it, okay? So clearer the water, faster the cadence. Dirtier the water, slower the cadence. All right. Last two things, we're going to talk about picking the bait type and color and size. And these are important facts. I can go over these a little quicker. Okay, so picking the right bait type, the two factors I want to talk to you about is diving depth and then action, okay? Diving depth and action. First one's diving depth. You saw me with this one. That's the Rapala Shadow Wrap. It's a great one. It's got that short bill. And when fish are in, call it 2-3 feet down to about 8 feet, 10 feet, 8 or 10 feet. Let's call it 8 feet. 2 to 8, 2 to 10. A short build jerkbait is the deal. But if you're fishing for fish that are deeper, closer to the bottom, suspended deeper, that's when you want to switch to that deeper bill suspending jerkbait. By the way, this is another Rapala Shadow Wrap, but let me mention, you have these options in every lure company that makes suspending jerkbait. So Strike King, Pradco, Sixth Sense, Berkeley, whatever lure company you love, they all make great baits. You're going to have these two choices. So 2 to 8 feet, 2 to 10 foot at the deepest, short bill. But when you get deeper with this suspending jerkbait, when you get deeper, go to that model that has that longer bill. And now this is going to be the one we pick 8 or 10 feet deeper, right? We're fishing in 12 feet. We're fishing in 15 feet. And we're getting fish to come up on this in 15, 20 feet, 18 feet. Deeper bill, okay? So bill type and then bait type. So specifically, I want you to pick a suspending jerkbait that has less action when the water is colder. And I want you to pick a suspending jerkbait type that has more action when the water's warmer. So in Rapala, it's great because Rapala has 3 different types of suspending jerkbaits that I use. And once again, every company has these different types. But in the Rapala world, we have a Husky jerk, which is an old school suspending jerkbait that has the least amount of side to side movement. The Husky jerk's the tightest. It doesn't move that far off center. It's the tightest action. So for colder water, for more inactive fish, I want the least action on the bait itself. In the middle, now we're talking about moderately cold, moderate temperature water, moderately active fish. This is a lot of the conditions you fish. Late fall, early winter, early spring, leading up to the spawn. A shadow wrap or a shadow wrap shad has a moderate amount of action. It's not super tight. It's not super wide. It's just kind of in the middle. And that is the most versatile one to me, the ones that have a moderate amount of side to side. And then last but not least, we've got a jerkbait with a lot of side to side movement, okay? And in the Rapala world, that's the X-Rap. The Rapala X-Rap has a shallow and deep. These all have Husky Jerk 2, shallow and deep model. But the X-Rap has the biggest side to side, left to right movement. So as that water gets hot and as the water really warms and when the fish's metabolism gets juiced up and that fish is active, hot water, that's the jerkbait, suspending jerkbait I go to. I go to the X-Rap. Warm water, big action, right? That's what you want. Okay, so there's jerkbait type. Last but not least, this will be the quickest one. Size and color. Size and color. And you know my rules of thumb on picking color on any bait, hard, soft, blades, non-blades, whatever, is always match the hatch. Match the hatch. So size and color, your first consideration when you go to Tackle Warehouse and you look at that suspending jerkbait page and you grab your chest because you can't imagine there's 3,000 colors. The number one, and sizes, the number one choice for you should be what are you trying to mimic, right? Are your shad or herring or shiners 4 or 5 inches long? Or are your bait fish little minnows? Are they baby perch? Is your forage little? 2, 3 inches long, right? So we're going to pick size and color of these suspending jerkbaits based on forage, okay? Based on forage. All right, 2 more things real quick I want to throw at you is water clarity. Water clarity is an overriding factor to picking suspending jerkbait color, and it's real simple. The clearer the water, the more I want a little translucency to the bait, right? Clear water to like crystal clear water. Look at this shadow wrap. If I hold this up and you look at it, you could actually see through this lure a little bit. It's got a transparency to it, right? So perfect for ultra clear water. So the cleaner the water, the more translucent or natural I want that color to be. But the dirtier the water, the more solid, the more contrast colors I want. So if you look at that shadow wrap, you can't see through that one. That one's solid white, right? So water clarity should be an overriding factor to match in the hatch, to forage. And then last but not least, I do want to mention this, and this is a little bonus tip for you guys, which is shock colors. Shock colors. And you've heard me talk about this with other lure types. You've heard me talk about this with sight fishing, with soft minnow baits, even with crankbaits. But bright colors, a pink, a bright pink, bright orange, pure chartreuse. Here's a pale chartreuse, but bright colors sometimes can be a deal. And especially when the water's clean, clearer water, and when the fish are grouped up, shock colors can be the deal because they see this thing coming through. They can see it from a ways away because of that bright color, and they're forced to sort of react on it. Especially if you're watching this and you fish for spotted bass or smallmouth, don't forget about having a couple shock colors in your box. That's real important. Man, we went over a lot in this second part. This is the ultimate guide to fishing a suspending jerkbait. This is a lure you gotta have in your tackle box. It's not one that maybe I'll put it in the fall, maybe I'll have it in the winter. No, you gotta have it year round. And the most important thing is cadence. And I hope you really understood that talk about rhythm, those jerks and twitches, finding the right cadence. It's the most important element of this. Listen, guys, this isn't over. We've got 2 more parts coming up in the next few weeks. We're going to be talking about tricking this thing out. I cannot wait for this next series. We're going to be talking about picking a suspending jerkbait that actually suspends, or making it rise head up very slowly, or making it sink head down very slowly. And we're going to be talking about how to do that, but we're going to be talking about why to do that, when to do that. It's a really tricked out piece at making a suspending jerkbait better. And then in the last segment, don't forget, cadence, getting that lure to do what you want it to do. You have to have the right rod, reel, and line. And then that last part of this series, it's all about our tackle, okay? Man, I hope you like what you're hearing. This is the series about suspending jerkbaits, the ultimate guide for suspending jerkbaits. If you like this, hit that subscribe button. Subscribe to my channel. Mash that button. We have new content coming, not like once a month or something. Every single week, new content coming at you. If you're already subscribed, tell your friends about Mike Iaconelli Fishing on YouTube. We're here to teach you some stuff, hopefully, and help you become a better fisherman. Suspending jerkbait, you got to have it. See you next week.